You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show. It's great to have you here with me today. Can't wait to get into our Total Wellness Tuesday episode, where we are going to be going over all things anti-inflammatory nutrition, as well as the overlooked and often misunderstood topic of omega-3s. There's a lot of misinformation out there right now about certain nutritional supplements, vegan versus other forms, and what is actually best for you. So instead of playing favorites today, what I like to do is give you an unbiased perspective of what the research actually shows and what works in real life. So there's always something I like to qualify whenever I'm doing a show. Research is done in essentially a laboratory. It's looked at over a certain subsect of the population. And real world is essentially, okay, here's what a practitioner is doing, and here's the results they're getting. I like both. I like to, for sure, know what a practitioner is doing and the results they've gotten. I've essentially modeled a lot of what I did early on in my career. Amongst that, my mentors, here's what they were doing, here's the results they were getting. Great, but I also want to know why, because you can be getting a specific result for your patient or for your client, but if you don't know why, it's not always replicable, and you don't know what may then happen in the future. But if you know why they're getting the results and they're getting that result, well, that's the home run. That's what you're looking for, because now you can say, here's why I'm doing it, here's why it works, and here's why it's going to stick, so the person gets those permanent results for life. And that's a lot of the confusion we have right now around omega-3s. I remember a decade ago, actually more than a decade ago now, 15 years ago, I'm working in the nutrition field, absolutely doing personal training, strength and conditioning, all that. And I was listening to this coach and doctor, smart guy, and they were recommending super high dosages of omega-3. And I don't know what it was, because again, I'm trying to model, I'm trying to do what the best out there are doing, and it just didn't sit right with me. It didn't sit right to give someone 20 grams of omega-3s a day. I just was like, that's just so much of that one thing. And I'm a believer in nutritional supplements. There's no doubt about that. But that high a dose of anything, it just seems like, well, that's just so unnatural, because the person would never be able to eat that many flax seeds, chia seeds, which we'll talk about, or even eat that much fish. That would be, I'm doing the math right now in my head, and that would be like 6 pieces of salmon at one sitting or for the day. And that's just too much, right? So, and now we know today that that's not a good idea, right? That's not a good idea. But there's always something that's in the middle, or in this case, nowhere near the 20 grams per day, that makes a lot more sense. And that is scientifically proven. And that's not going to have those negative side effects. If anything, it's actually going to help with brain-based diseases, unchecked inflammation, allergies, mood disorder, learning disabilities. Okay, I don't want to give away everything too quick. That's really what we're talking about. So what I want to do today is let you know that I come from a perspective that I know this works in practice. Like, today's topic was actually supposed to be on the reasons people get thinning hair, lose their hair, etc., and what to do about it. And I'm still going to do that show, don't get me wrong. But this one is so pertinent, and here's why. Yesterday, I'm doing a full day of consultations, and I love it. I really do. I love labs. I really love functional medicine lab testing. I love the data, and I get a lot of questions on what's the difference between functional medicine and Ayurvedic medicine. I'm going to do a show on that as well, but nothing else. There's no other form of medicine that's doing state-of-the-art lab testing. That's what functional medicine success, it really, well, yes, it succeeds at. I mean, that's what it does, is because you can't deny the data. So here's the thing. I run a lot of labs. You never have to run labs if you don't want. I love data. I run the labs on myself all the time. I run them with my kids. I run them with my wife. I run them with my family, is because I want to make sure, not from a stress standpoint, but just say, hey, listen, if something comes up, no stress, no worries. Here's how we fix it. And I'm going to show you the fix on today's show. I mean, like, that's the thing is like, it's all fixable. It really is. I know in my future career, whatever that is, right? It's always going to be in health. But I know for sure I'm going to be working on devices that give you real-time data. There's no doubt about that. I just know that that's like where I'm going to move to. And if you're in that field right now, I would love to partner with you on projects like that. I'd love to be able to share with you what I see in the real world. I'd love to be able to get that out to my community. Now it has to be proven, right? I need to actually give my stamp of approval, but for sure, it's what I'm going to be doing. I want people to know what their data points are at all times, or at least, for a weekly check-in. And then I want to be able to give real actionable advice. Well, I know the actionable advice. I just can't get people to do labs that quickly. And it's also not cost effective right now, but I believe we'll be there one day. I really do. And I know for sure those are things that I can't wait to work on, because remember, like if I'm running a CEA, I'm getting a little off topic, but if I'm running like a marker for a CEA, well, I can see if there's cancer cells starting to grow in the body. And why wouldn't I want to know that on a weekly basis, right? I'd want to know that. And then I'd be like, okay, let's ramp up those white blood cells, or let's ramp up those natural killer cells. Let's get going now. We don't want these things to start to thrive, right? And then we could say, okay, well, where is the cancer? Let's do a thermography-based scan, right? Let's take a look at the body in a natural way. Okay, great. Okay. Seems to be like it's in the colon. Okay, let's do now, because we don't want to do invasive procedures if we don't have to. Okay, but now let's do that colonoscopy, right? Let's actually see if this is benign or if it's a malignant-based tumor. Okay, let's take a snip of that. Oh, it is benign. Good. Okay, well, here's what else, though, we need to be doing. We need to be getting serious now about our diet. We need to make sure we're getting that 30, 35 grams of fiber. We need to make sure we're more plant-based, that we don't have constipation, right? So again, I'm going off on a tangent, but because this is what I love, and it has nothing to do with money, it has nothing to do with anything like that. It's just like, this are things that people need. It's for sure a passion of mine, and I know if you're listening to the Cabral Concept, you probably want to know more about your health, and you want to be able to save your loved ones and be able to pass this on to your kids. And, I just think about it from the perspective where I have so much fun right now when, myself and all of my kids and their cousins are all around playing. And then, one day they'll have kids, and well, I'd like to be around for that too. But I also don't want to be decrepit. And I say that in the real term of that. I want to be able to move around with my body, and I want to be healthy. So I don't want to live forever if my body is broken down. So I want to do both. And that's why I share with you today's topic. And so, simply put, I want to go through this with you right now, but let me just give you some of these signs and symptoms, because there's so many people dealing with this right now, of dealing essentially with all these signs and symptoms of low omega-3s. And it's one of the most crucial things that you need, and I want to share with you why that is right now. So one of the biggest things I see in my practice, I'm just going to start with kids, because we work with kids, we work with adults, we work with all ages, literally all ages, from infants all the way up to, well, our oldest client was 106 years old. And so when we look at that, this is what I see. When they lack omega-3s, there's a lot of issues with the skin. So this goes for adults and children, by the way. This is not just children, but here's what we see a lot in children. We see rough skin. We see bumps on the skin. We see skin rash. We see eczema. We see psoriasis. We see dry scalp, okay? But in children, we also see mood disorders. We see a poor socialization with children. We see executive function disorder. We see ADD. We see ADHD. And here's why. Omega-3, specifically DHA, we'll get to that in a moment, what that means, is used and uptaken by the brain. The brain needs it. It's crucial, right? It's crucial for IQ. Those with lower omega-3 develop in a lower IQ. I gave you on my Friday reviews, I always give you research. Mothers that took omega-3s, their children had higher IQs. This is not by mistake. The omega-3s actually help with brain and the nervous system and the neural synapses and the connections of how we learn. It's so important. Okay, low omega-3s. I talked about that in a book review I did like 2 years ago, and it was The Brain Diet. And this is an older book now, but again, when I read it a decade ago or so, it was new. And it was done by a Dr. Harvard PhD, I believe. And it showed that, bedwetting and social issues and the learning disabilities, a lot of it had to do with omega-3s. It's not the only thing, right? I talked about that in another book called brain power, nutritional brain power. I think I need a little bit more omega-3s myself right now. Going back in the memory bank, I'll find that and I'll link it up as well. But it goes into, a lot of mood things. This helped me out tremendously. I had a terrible temper when I was younger. I had, again, not in a good mood, kind of angry all the time. So here's the thing though. Got some zinc in my body, got some omega-3s, got some B6 and other B vitamins, made sure my blood sugar restabilized. That was a huge thing. And mood, so much better. So much better. And that's because your body's made from nutritional biochemistry. Now, there's also energy and all that. I don't deny that. But you need nutrients to make you feel better. All right, let's get back on those omega-3s. So dry skin, it also goes for the hair. The hair can be dry and brittle. The nails can be dry and brittle. Skin is rough and has skin rashes. Okay, that's all part of omega-3s. Another difficulty is with mood. So if you feel like you can't relax, if you're on edge, if you seem a little bit edgy, if you can't sleep, omega-3s help with that. If you have difficulty recalling memory-wise, difficulty paying attention, I kind of touched on that with the ADD for sure and ADHD. Omega-3s help with that. I'm going to give you the difference in a moment between EPA and DHA omega-3. It's super important. This is where all the confusion comes from. All right, the mood swings, the depression, the anxiety, the overwhelm. Yes, it comes from life. There's no doubt about that. But omega-3s help you deal with life, right? Like B complexes do. Joint pain, arthritis, one of the biggest things and biggest differences we see is if you give somebody with joint pain omega-3s, they begin to feel better. Now, are they completely healed? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe not. I'm not going to say that it's a miracle nutrient or anything like that, but tremendous because what does it do? Well, it reduces inflammation. And we can say that because it's clinically proven to reduce inflammation. It actually works. Not only does it work, they're writing prescriptions now for omega-3s, right? So we know for sure that it works. Speaking of prescriptions, with heart-based disease and inflammation in the arteries, omega-3s just flat work. They prescribe them after someone's had a heart attack. Now, for you, I recommend don't wait to have the heart attack. Take the omega-3s now. It's so important. I'm not going to do all the different labs that I did. I'm going to link up the lab show I did on omega-3s before because there's a lab test that you can do that actually, if you get your levels in check, you have a 90% risk reduction for cardiac death. 90% risk reduction for cardiac death if you have a 9% omega-3 saturation in the blood. I just want to repeat that. If you have a 9% omega-3 saturation rate in the blood, you have a 90% risk reduction rate for heart attack, even if your cholesterol is high, even if your homocysteine is high, even if your CRP is high, although it probably won't be if you have that much omega-3, right, in the blood. So that's the thing. I'm going to link that up. Today's show notes are going to be on StephenCabral.com/1285. All right, StephenCabral.com/1285. I won't keep mentioning the episode number, but everything's going to be there. The link to previous. Well, I did a bunch of shows on omega-3s before, but I'm going to link up to the one on the lab testing that teaches you how to go through it. Highly unsaturated fatty acids. I do this for our integrative health practitioners. It's so important. You go through your EPA to DHA score. Again, so important. You go through your arachidonic acid. I'm not going to go through that today either, but arachidonic acid, the inflammatory omega-6s. Those are the ones that can cause a heart attack even if you have normal cholesterol. That's why cholesterol is not the end-all, be-all. I'll tell you right now, you can do it with any doctor that you want, but you need to get the right data and know what to do with it. So knowing your omega-3 to omega-6 score is one of the most important things to do, especially after the age of 35. It really is. All right, let me move on. So a couple more things. Weight gain, metabolism can have to do with omega-3s because of the inflammation that leads to those, eyesight and vision problems. Without a doubt, you will see an improvement with the right dosage of omega-3s and making sure that you're getting the right type. And we're going to go over that in just 1 second. All right. So those are the main issues I want to go over with omega-3s. It's inflammation in general, allergies, asthma. I didn't mention that. That's a big one. Skin issues, learning, mood. Of course, sleep goes along with that as well. But any inflammatory issue is absolutely going to be affected by omega-3s. There's just no doubt about it because they work on regulating inflammation in the body in terms of what we said, arachidonic acid. Okay, so let's go over these right now. And I want to give you my tips on actually how it works in the body. So here's the issue. There's a lot of doctors right now and a lot of experts out there that, although well-intentioned, are not giving you the best up-to-date advice on omega-3s. And I just want to explain that. And you know that I will never disparage anyone because everyone here is trying to do their best work. Like, there's no doubt about it. And without a doubt, I am not the only voice on natural health. And I would never say that. I would actually say to you, get a lot of different viewpoints, get a lot of different opinions. What speaks to you? What seems to be, at essence, the actual truth, right? You can't cherry pick studies. You can't do that. It does not work. You need a foundation to build off of. If someone points to this one study or two studies that this, and this happened, fine, great, fantastic. But is it a solid foundation to build off of? Because most likely it's just in this particular small area of your life. If these things are happening and this, and this exactly happens at the right time, and there's a full moon, okay, then this study works perfect, right? Because that's a lot of times how it is. A lot of studies just aren't worth their weight if it does not match up with what actually happens in the real world over a longer period of time. Many things can work in the short term, we know that, but they absolutely break down in the long term. So here's how omega-3s work. This is super important to understand. There's three main forms. Okay, there's actually multiple forms. There's actually multiple forms of omega-3s, but there's three main forms. There's ALA. And ALA stands for alpha linolenic acid. And I always can't pronounce that correctly. It just does not roll off my tongue. I've never been a linguist, that's for sure. So that is the plant-based form. We are going to get the ALA forms predominantly from seaweed and algae-based foods. We're going to get them from flaxseed. We're going to get them from chia seeds. We're going to get them from hemp seeds. We can get them from walnuts. We can get them from, what's another good one? Perilla seeds. Not a lot of people have heard about that. It's Perilla. And just a few other vegan-based foods. Like, believe it or not, Brussels sprouts are actually higher in omega-3s. They're not massively high, but they've got a good amount of ALA. Now, when I say they're high in omega-3s, they're high in omega-3s only from an ALA perspective. And I will save you from me trying to pronounce that again. So here's the thing, though. And again, I try to stay, and not try to, I am as unbiased as humanly possible. All I want to do is make sure people get the proper information that is not skewed from a paleo perspective, a vegan perspective, a keto perspective, but I'm fair. I am fair. I really am. And here's the thing. When you take in a plant-based form of omega-3, now, before I say this, I want to say is that I love plant-based forms of omega-3. But the truth is this. The conversion is only about 8% of ALA makes it to EPA. Now, remember that because that's going to come up next. Okay, 8% out of 100%, only 8% is converted to EPA. And only 0 to 4% is converted to DHA. This is important because EPA and DHA are the actual usable forms that make the biggest difference in the body. You want the mood benefits, you want the skin, you want the hair, you want the learning, you want the brain base, the anti-inflammatory, all of those. It's from EPA and DHA. I'll go over those in just a second. Okay. So in men, the conversion is about 8% to EPA, a maximum of 4% to DHA. Now, in women, now this is younger as well. As we get older, we convert less because enzymes, etc. And I'll go over that. In women, it was actually about 21%. And for EPA, it was about 9%. To DHA, a little less than 7%. So in women, they actually convert plant-based forms a little bit better. But still a maximum of 21% converted to EPA. Oh, and about 9% converted to DHA. Yes, for sure. So when we look at that, we say, okay, that's not a lot. Especially since a serving that you need for enough ALA is going to be a minimum of 3 tablespoons of flaxseed or chia seed per day. Now, flaxseed is still going to convert essentially the best. It really is. It's better converted than chia seed. Most studies, it's twice as much. Seaweed is another great one, but how often are you eating seaweed and how much? You know, I like to put nori crinkles on top of salads or Buddha bowls that I make. Nori crinkles are a great way to do it. If you've never had nori crinkles, check them out at your local Erewhon, Sprouts, Whole Foods, etc. So check that out. Now we know that plant-based omega-3s don't convert as well. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't eat them. It does not mean that. And if you're vegan, well, you just know that now you need to eat a little bit more of those. Hemp hearts is one of my favorite. Now, there are omega-6s in hemp hearts. There's omega-6s in all of these, though. That's part of a plant-based food. So here's the thing, though. I'm a big fan of 3 tablespoons a day. So I get 3 tablespoons a day of hemp hearts. That's what I use for my protein at lunch. And then my shake in the morning, the daily nutritional support shake, has psyllium in it and it has flax in it. And that flax is going to give you some omega-3s. You can always add more. There's no doubt about that. You can always add more. That's okay. All right. Now, let's talk about EPA, though. So if you want to know the best forms of omega-3s, I did a whole podcast on it. I gave you the actual form of fish that converts the best. So for example, just eating any type of fish does not convert the best to EPA and DHA. I did a whole show on it. I gave you the higher ones in mercury. I'll try to link that up today as well. But you can always go back and you can search at stevencabral.com/podcasts. But those fish were sardines, mackerel, anchovies, wild salmon, and trout. Those are the ones that are lower in mercury and also convert well to EPA and DHA. The other ones, I can tell you from a clinical perspective, with thousands and thousands of labs to back this up, those are the ones that actually convert, that actually work without supplementation. Okay, so now let's get into it. I want to show you ALA. Why is it's more difficult? Because it has to go through what's called 3 main transformations to actually make its way to EPA. Now, why is EPA so important? EPA, I'm not going to bore you here, but EPA is actually what helps decrease inflammation the most. It helps with mood. It helps with triglycerides and the heart. It helps with balancing female hormones. Super important. DHA is used more for brain development. It's used for the eyes. It's used for the nervous system. It's used for kind of mental cognition. And then EPA and DHA combined work with overall heart health. They work on the joints. They work on balancing your immune system, especially if you're Th2 immune dominant, like someone like I'm more prone to, where I'll have more histamines typically, more prone to allergies, more prone to those itchy eyes. You know, that's me, right? Like for sure. We have a long line of genetics like that. But remember, genetics don't have to be your destiny. You just have to balance your body. So remember, EPA and DHA are very important. Here's the problem. A lot of doctors are mostly prescribing or going higher doses on DHA. It's different than DHEA. DHEA is different. Dihydroepiandrosterone. And what we're looking at is that's a precursor to testosterone. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about today. DHA is decoxyhexanoic acid. And that is actually the last form, the bottom of the rung. So if you look at, the analogy I like to give is this. You're at a wedding. I don't think anybody does this anymore, but you're at a wedding and you have all the champagne glasses stacked up in a giant pyramid. They don't start at the bottom, right? They pour it at the top glass. Think of the top glass as ALA, the plant-based one, right? And it flows down. Well, about halfway there, you're at EPA. Now your body's starting to get the real effects. And as it flows down to the bottom, that's DHA. Okay, think about this. A lot of doctors, a lot of health practitioners are recommending higher doses of DHA. Here's the issue with that. It's possible, but harder for DHA to flow uphill to EPA. But it's easy for EPA to flow down to DHA. We have the clinical evidence to back this up, and this is why we do a 2-to-1 ratio of EPA to DHA. Now, I want to tell you exactly why. EPA, for those that want to know, stands for eicosapentaenoic acid. And DHA, again, is decoxyhexanoic acid. Let's just call them EPA and DHA so that I don't have to fumble over my words too much. So EPA, here's what it does. Here's why it's so great. It blocks. It is the one that basically pushes out a lot of the arachidonic acid. That is the inflammatory one. The joints hurt with it. The heart begins to get inflamed. We don't want that in our body. It leads to all sorts of dis-ease in the body. Well, EPA begins to create anti-inflammatory prostaglandins, the series 3 and the series 5. You don't need to know about those. All you need to know is that it creates anti-inflammatories in the body, right? Where arachidonic acid will be the more pro-inflammatory series 2 or series 4. It leads to cardiovascular issues. It leads to neurological issues. It leads to all sorts of inflammatory mood hormone issues. EPA essentially crowds that out. It pushes it out. It knocks it out. And it does that when it has its cofactors of vitamin C, of B3, of zinc, And as you'll find out in a moment, magnesium and B6 as well. Well, here's the thing. This is why, and this is where a lot of practitioners are going wrong. And it's not their fault because they're told that DHA is great for the brain, the eyes, the nervous system. It's great. Don't get me wrong. DHA is a superstar. However, EPA, from a clinical perspective, does a better job. Now, should your formula have both EPA and DHA? Yes. Do you need more EPA? That's what it seems to be. And that's because, again, EPA can now become DHA. Here's how. We use cofactors such as B6. We use vitamin C, B3, magnesium, and zinc. Okay. What happens? Well, there's actually a term for it, and it's been termed Sprecher's shunt. Now, I don't know. I'm assuming it was the scientist or doctor that came up with it. Their name was Sprecher. I don't know. I haven't looked into that. But I know how it works. It doesn't matter. It's like Hashimoto's thyroiditis. It's an autoimmune issue with the thyroid. It doesn't matter that its name is Hashimoto's. Probably not, right? But let's give the scientist credit who came up with it. So here's the thing, though. EPA can actually be converted. There's an intermediary step where it becomes decoxyhexanoic acid, and then it moves over to, it becomes decoxypentanoic acid, and then becomes decoxyhexanoic acid as EPA flows downhill, and then becomes DPA, let's call it, and then finally DHA. So we know that taking in more EPA can be converted to DHA. Okay, we'll leave it at that for right now, but I want you to know the science behind it. It's why EPA can actually give you the benefits of DHA because it can be converted. And again, DHA can flow uphill, but it's not as easy. It just doesn't work necessarily the same way. So I want you to know that's how you can get the absolute benefits on it. Now, just a couple other things right now. A lot of people are taking in eggs as an omega-3. Here's the problem with that. They say high in omegas. Sometimes they just say high in omegas. It can also be high in omega-6s, which is why you have to be careful because a lot of these chickens and hens are being fed. So eggs aren't necessarily high in omegas. What happens is the hen is being fed feed that's high in omega-3s, right? So they're feeding it sometimes soy. They're feeding it sometimes flaxseed. They're feeding it things that would then increase the omegas. But if they feed it something like soy, it can also have higher levels of omega-6s. So we have to be careful there, all right? I don't want you to look to eggs as your source of omega-3s. You'll look at your vegan-based sources, and you'll look at your seafood, fish-based sources. The other thing that you can do is you can take an omega-3 supplement. Now, people always ask me, how much? Typically, you're taking 2 to 3 grams per day. That's the safe amount to maintain essentially for life. Children obviously will do a third of that dosage. They'll do whatever it is for their body weight based on where they're at. If they're, let's say 40, 50 pounds, they'll do about a third of a dosage. If they weigh about 100 pounds, they'll do about 2/3 the dosage. 75 pounds, they'll do about half the dosage, right? So that's how I would look at it. Now, the omega-3 liquid for an adult is 1 teaspoon. The capsules for an adult are 2 capsules. You can take 1 at lunch and 1 at dinner, or 2 at dinner. For a child, it would just simply be a third of a teaspoon, right? And the capsules are quite large, so kids aren't going to be able to do those. Those are wild fish based. So remember, important to get your fish non-GMO, well, in terms of salmon, and important not to get them farmed because farmed fish does not contain high levels of omega-3. It actually contains higher levels of omega-6s. Why? They are feeding them omega-6 based foods like corn. Believe it or not, they're feeding fish corn in their little plastic swimming pools. It is deplorable. This is what we are doing in the world today. So ideally, it should be sustainable. Ideally, the fish should be wild. Now, again, if you're going vegan-based sources, it is hard to find a good vegan omega-3. It's why we don't have one that we're recommending right now. We are working on formulating one. It's been over a year. This is how long it takes us to make sure that we get one that we can recommend. We are working on a seaweed and algae-based extract. Now, keep in mind, all of these extracts from a vegan-based source, when it comes to algae, those types of things that are high in omega-3s are going to be more of the DHA. Now, that's okay. At least you are getting that good high source, and then we're going to work on getting some of the ALA in there to flow down to EPA. So again, if you're vegan, I support you 100%, and we can do it through diet, and we also want to watch our omega-6s because we don't want high omega-6s. If you're someone that will eat fish, you can do the omega-3 supplementation, or you can eat more of the fish that I named. Keep in mind, in order to keep those omega-3 levels high, it has to be at least 4 times a week. I have not seen it work in practice with less than 3 to 4 times a week of those high omega-3 fish. Now, if you want to know for sure what your levels are and how much supplementation you'll need or how much more food you'll need to eat, because you can do it either way, then you can do the omega-3 lab test. I will link all of that up today at stephencabral.com/1285. Okay, today was a big show. I went a little long, but I wanted you to have this information, and I want you to know the science behind these things, how we can tell you exactly how many omega-3s you need, if your diet right now is working. Because a lot of people say, oh, no, I get it through my diet. Well, I don't know. Like, do you really know that? Unless you've lab tested, you don't really know that. And I'm not necessarily saying you have to lab test, but if you want to know for sure, the lab testing is exactly what tells you that. You can do it with your functional medicine doctor that specializes in this. You can do it with your integrative health practitioner, or you can do that test at equilibriumnutrition.com. It's your choice. I want to provide you with the information, tell you exactly where you're at. But remember, let's not kid ourselves. Like, it's really, really important. Omega-3s help modulate inflammation. If you're not doing that, you're going to be more prone to all of the dis-eases of the body that I just spoke about. Thank you, everyone, so much for tuning in. Please do feel free to share this show with anyone you believe it could serve. Before you go, I wanted to ask you this question. What if I could teach you in just a couple of hours how to transform your thyroid, hormones, adrenal, cholesterol, blood pressure, blood sugar, weight loss, energy, mood, brain, pregnancy, anti-aging, or many other health-related issues? After 20 years in private practice, after seeing and overseeing 250,000 client appointments, I sincerely feel I have the real-world data and have found the answer you've been searching for. So what I've done is spent hundreds of hours of my own time refining what you need to know in order to uncover your underlying root cause health issues and then begin to rebalance the body and bring it back to a state of robust health and wellness. I'm going to teach you exactly what I do in my private practice so you can understand how you got here and now what you need to do in order to heal. You'll receive all of the important success checklists, protocols, and even ways to customize it to make the program fit your busy life. And you'll get all of this at a fraction of the price. Let me save you the time, money, energy, stress, and frustration of not knowing what to do next. Instead of reading dozens of books on the topic and seeing multiple practitioners, I will condense everything that you need to know in just a few hours of video tutorials that you can watch and listen to anywhere. Together, we will make this healing process an enjoyable one that you can take with you for the rest of your life. I wish you all of the best of health and happiness, and I hope to be able to guide you on your healing journey through my Health Results Accelerators. Simply choose the health imbalance you're currently suffering from, and by the end of today, you'll know what went wrong and how to get well again. I guarantee it. For details, head over now to stephencabral.com/courses.